So you and your friends want to get into board gaming, but you're not quite sure how. Today on Hit the Table, we're going to talk about just that. It's gateway games. Greetings friends, and welcome to the first episode of Hit the Table. My name's Corey Stein, and I'm going to be your guide on this journey through board games, role-playing games, card games, war games, and any other kind of game that you might want to sit down at a table at and play with your friends. Most people's experience with board games comes from Monopoly or Sorry, these games from our childhood that stick with us, but that we grow out of after a while. The vast majority of the population doesn't understand that board gaming now has hit a renaissance. There are more themes, more game mechanics than you could ever hope to play in a lifetime. One of the things we've noticed about the massive internet gaming community is that it tends to be relatively exclusive. It caters to the people who are already in the know. But if you and your friends are new to board gaming, you might not necessarily know how to go about getting into the hobby or what games to buy. There's so many to choose from. We call this type of experience a gateway game, and the reason for that is because a lot of people need to have their mind opened up to the possibilities of modern board gaming. What we're going to do is give you a list of some of our favorite gateway games so that you know where to get started. This first title is one that every gamer should have in their collection, if only because of its seductive ability to bring new people into the hobby. It's called Ticket to Ride, and it's one of the most elegant and simple games ever made. I have personally won over a number of people who were staunchly anti-board gaming before they played this sucker. Even your parents can get into this one, and that's no lie. Ticket to Ride is a powerful experience that will have everyone wanting more. I know what you're saying. Corey, I don't really care about trains. That doesn't seem like a theme I'm interested in. But it's not really about the theme with this one. What's great about Ticket to Ride is that it's equal parts strategic and effortless. Anybody can pick it up and learn how to play, but there's a depth that really lets even the most experienced people bite off something that's really, really wonderful. Players take on the role of a railroad baron during the late 1800s who's trying to expand his empire across the United States. They do that with these cards. When you have a number of cards that are equal to each other, so say for example 2 blues, you can put down 2 cars in a spot on the map. Each player has an opportunity to watch as their tracks grow and expand, playing more cards, more of the same color, and as long as they match up with the track type, you're good to go. But where's that complexity I was talking about? That comes in the form of ticket cards. Tickets give you a route that you have to complete in order to get the points at the bottom. However, nobody knows if you've actually achieved that feat. When it comes to the end of the game, if you haven't completed that route, those points get subtracted from your total. If, however, you've managed to successfully complete every single one of your routes, you will go skyrocketing past everyone else. So while you can judge other players' strategies as they're putting down cards, you don't necessarily know what routes they're going for or how many points they've tallied up for the end of the game. This adds a random element that's really surprising, and anyone at the table can win. I can't emphasize enough how powerful a driver Ticket to Ride is in bringing new people into this hobby, especially if it's you or your friends. You can read the rules in 5 minutes and then you can dig into a game. It only takes about half an hour to play, maybe 45 minutes. Nobody has to be sitting there for a prolonged period of time. There's not a lot to keep track of. You can really just focus on having a good time, and the strategic byproducts will be enough to get people to want to keep coming back for more. Once you've mastered Ticket to Ride and worn it out with the rest of your game group, it's time to pick up something with a little bit more complexity. I'm going to suggest Small World. Small World is a charming strategy game that reduces some of the higher concepts of wargaming into something that's a bit more palpable for the general populace. This doesn't mean that it's dumbed down at all, and it certainly doesn't mean that it's any less fun. The key to this game is its combination of elements that make it almost infinitely replayable. At the beginning, each player takes on the role of a fantasy race in a world whose landmass is rapidly shrinking because so many people are starting to settle. In this case, we've chosen the Ratmen, but those Ratmen also get a power to coincide with things that they can already do. In this case, they're Berserkers. There's dozens of different combinations of races and powers, meaning that there's just as many options for gameplay. You can go at this game from so many different strategic vantage points, and that changes as you move along. Each race is given a certain number of tokens to place down in specific parts of the map that allow them to control it. Once you've run out of tokens, that means your armies are spread too thin, and you have to go into what's called decline. When a civilization goes into decline, the player still gets all of the benefits of having those tokens out on the board, but they get to start a new civilization, a new combination of power and race. This fluctuation between growth and decline makes for a really dynamic experience despite the simplicity of Small World. Combat isn't difficult either, like it would be in most other war games. You just simply have to have enough tokens to overtake the person who's already on that piece of land. However, I'd argue that the real joy of Small World comes from watching the borders change, from seeing this history of this land unfold before your eyes, and even though there's no detail, you can still, with your imagination, create a lot of the scenarios as to what's going on. If you're a fan of the fantasy genre, if you like the idea of running your own civilization, if you think on a macro scale instead of a micro scale, I think you're really gonna like Small World and you should definitely pick it up. And even if this kind of thing doesn't necessarily appeal to you, the gameplay is so unique and fun that I really think you should give it a shot. One of the things I'd like to point out is that both Small World and Ticket to Ride are made by a company called Days of Wonder, who really like to focus on these kind of introductory or gateway experiences. If these themes just don't sound interesting to you, if you can't rally enough friends to want to play something like this, then maybe check out their website and see what else they have to offer, because most of what they make can be played by a beginner. One of the things that Small World and Ticket to Ride have in common is that they find a balance between simplicity of play and complexity of strategy. Our final game on this list does something very similar. It manages to create its own economy, to create its own world, but yet still keep grounded enough that you always know exactly what you're doing. It's called Lords of Waterdeep. Lords of Waterdeep is a game that takes place in the fictional Dungeons & Dragons universe from Wizards of the Coast, specifically the campaign setting known as the Forgotten Realms. If that all sounds a bit overwhelming to you, then trust me when I say Lords of Waterdeep can be played by anyone, even if they've never picked up a 20-sided die. Instead of playing the hero on an epic journey across a fantasy land, you get to play the benefactor, the one who's hiring the heroes to go out on those quests. You are a Lord of Waterdeep, as the title of the game would suggest. Your goal is simple enough. You want to become the most powerful lord in the whole city, and you do that by having adventurers go out on quests and bringing back artifacts, defeating enemies, and helping generally take care of business for you. As you explore Waterdeep, you place agents on different buildings to hire the adventurers that you'll need to complete the quests in your hand. Maybe you'll need 2 rogues, or a cleric, or maybe a little extra money to get the job done. Once you have all of the required elements, you go ahead and complete the quest, and that gives you points that you track around the edge of the board. You can also play intrigue cards, which will allow you to reap certain benefits, or to destroy your opponent's strategies right in the middle of the game. This is an excellent way to be a thorn in everyone's side. Finally, you also have the option to invest in real estate. You can purchase buildings that will give you materials that you might not necessarily be able to get on the board at the beginning of the game. What's great is that if somebody lands on your building, you get something for it. You benefit. This means there's a sort of push and pull as to whether or not you want to go onto another player's building, because while you get a lot of great things for that, it also gives them a distinct advantage. Lords of Waterdeep has a lot of moving parts, and so it's probably not great for your first game ever. You're going to want to stick to a Ticket to Ride or a Settlers of Catan, something like that. But once you've mastered those titles, This one is not terribly difficult to learn, and what's great is that it tells you the instructions. Everything that you need to know is already on the board. If you land on this space, you pick up this minion. If you land on this other space, you pick up this much money. Everything's described for you. There's not a lot that you have to memorize like in some deeper strategy games. Still, with all of the backstabbing and the random economic mayhem, Lords of Waterdeep is a great way to engage new players, so if you know how to play the game, it's pretty easy to teach them how to play the game. And even if they've never had any experience with Dungeons & Dragons, they'll certainly enjoy their trip to the Forgotten Realms. Well folks, that's it for Hit the Table this week. We really hope you enjoyed this little experiment of ours. We've been trying to expand the amount of video content that we bring to you, and board games and role-playing games, these type of things, are just as big of a part of Jetpack Joust as all the indie game stuff is. So we want to make sure that we're keeping our horizons broad. You can find all of these experiences, whether it be Ticket to Ride, Small World, or Lords of Waterdeep, at your local gaming store or maybe even comic book shop, and you can always check Amazon because they're always in stock there as well. If you really want to become a board gamer, if you want your friends to become board gamers, I'm going to suggest you take a look at the links below. We posted a few articles a few weeks ago about the terminology and genres, about some of the different styles and gameplay mechanics that you can find in modern board games, and it might help to alleviate some of your confusion and help you figure out exactly what it is that you should be playing. We're also going to suggest that in general, you just check back with jetpackjoust.com all the time, because we're constantly posting tabletop news, we're constantly giving you new information about the board gaming scene, about the indie gaming scene, and in a few weeks we're going to be heading out to PAX East. Hopefully there'll be some cool announcements there, or we'll get to play some games and tell you our feedback. So if nothing else, please make sure you check out that link down there as well. Follow us on Twitter at JetpackJoust. We're really active. You can also check us out at facebook.com/JetpackJoust. In 2 weeks, we'll be back with another episode of Hit the Table, in which we're going to talk about getting into the role-playing game space, which is something entirely different that we think we can help you with as well. So we hope you'll come back, we hope you'll check out Can I Kick It, and we hope you'll check out all the videos we got going on this channel. Subscribe, do all that stuff, and until next time, I'll give you a Bill Murray.